In the bustling heart of Lagos, where the sound of car horns mixed with the call of street hawkers, a new church rose like a shining star. The signboard read, Fire of the Spirit Ministry, Pastor Paul Oyanuga, the man of divine wonders. Every Sunday, crowds filled the dusty compound. People came from far and near, some with broken bodies, others with broken hearts. Pastor Paul's name spread faster than Harmattan fire. They said the blind saw, the lame walked, and barren women gave birth after his prayers. Pastor Paul was tall, dark-skinned, with eyes that carried both charm and mystery. He wore white suits and spoke in a deep, commanding voice. When he lifted his hands, people fell to the ground, trembling as if lightning had touched their souls. The congregation screamed, Power, power. But behind the pulpit's glow, darkness whispered. At midnight, when the city slept, Pastor Paul walked to a small river behind his house. There, hidden among the thick bamboo trees, stood a tiny shrine. He would kneel before a clay pot filled with black water and whisper strange incantations. A shadowy figure, half human, half beast, emerged from the mist. You have done well, Paul, it said in a deep voice that rattled the night. But remember, my gift demands loyalty. Every miracle must be paid for in blood. Pastor Paul nodded, fear and greed mixing in his chest. I understand, he said. Just keep my church growing. The next Sunday the church overflowed. Testimonies filled the air like smoke, people shouting about healings and breakthroughs. But one woman, Sister Sarah, watched quietly. She had the gift of discernment and felt a strange heaviness each time Pastor Paul laid hands on people. That night she dreamt of a dark altar with Pastor Paul standing before it, his white suit stained with blood. When she woke, her heart beat fast. Lord, she prayed, show me what this means. Days turned to weeks and the miracles continued. The more people shouted, Man of God, the darker Pastor Paul's secret became. He began to avoid his old friends, even his wife noticed his mood swings. At night he would lock himself in his study, whispering strange words. One evening, Mama Ruth, a widow who had been healed by Pastor Paul, came crying to the church. Since the day you prayed for me, Pastor, I have not slept. I see dark shadows around my bed every night. Pastor Paul smiled nervously, pretending to pray again, but deep down he knew her torment was the price of his power. Sister Sarah watched everything, praying silently. Something told her the Lord was preparing her for a battle. The night in Lagos was thick with silence, broken only by the hum of faraway generators. Inside his mansion on the outskirts of the city, Pastor Paul sat in his study, surrounded by flickering candles. On his desk lay a strange wooden box carved with ancient symbols. He opened it carefully, revealing cowries, a small mirror, and red cloth tied in knots. The air grew heavy. He muttered under his breath, Spirits of power, renew my strength. A cold wind blew through the room, though all windows were shut. In the mirror, a pair of glowing eyes appeared. Paul, the voice hissed, you owe us 2 souls this month. He trembled. I have already given you sacrifices, he protested. Then give us more, the voice commanded. The crowd must grow, the fame must spread, but the price must be paid. Pastor Paul fell to his knees. He knew the dark pact couldn't be broken. He had exchanged his soul for power, and now the shadows ruled him. The next Sunday, Fire of the Spirit Ministry overflowed beyond its walls. People climbed trees just to hear the man of God. Pastor Paul shouted into the microphone, Your miracle is today, every chain is broken. The crowd roared, women screamed, men fell under his touch. But in the spiritual realm, unseen by mortal eyes, dark shadows moved through the crowd, attaching themselves to those who came for healing. Sister Sarah sat near the back, praying quietly. Her eyes, sharp and discerning, caught something others could not see, a faint black mist swirling around Pastor Paul's feet. Her heart froze. After the service she approached Elder Tund. Elder, she said softly, something is not right in this church. Elder Tund frowned. What do you mean, Sister Sarah? Haven't you seen the miracles? The lame walk, the blind see. She shook her head. Miracles can come from light or from darkness. My spirit is troubled. Elder Tund sighed. Be careful what you say, Sarah. Many will not believe you. Pastor Paul is loved by all. That night, as Sarah prayed in her small apartment, the lights flickered. A cold breeze swept through the room. She heard whispers, soft, eerie voices calling her name. Sarah, Sarah, stop digging into what you do not understand. She fell to her knees. Jesus, cover me in your blood, she shouted. The voices vanished instantly, but she knew the battle had begun. Meanwhile, Pastor Paul sat in his car, breathing heavily. He had just returned from another midnight visit to the river shrine. The spirit had appeared again, demanding greater sacrifices. Next Sunday, the voice said, call for a healing service. A woman will come wearing a red scarf. Her blood will feed us. Pastor Paul's heart pounded. Must I do this? You must, the spirit hissed. Disobey and your secret will be revealed. That Sunday, a woman indeed came wearing a red scarf. She limped to the altar, begging for healing. Pastor Paul hesitated, but when he laid hands on her, she screamed and dropped lifeless. The crowd panicked, shouting and crying. Pastor Paul quickly said, the devil is fighting this miracle, pray harder. The body twitched, and then the woman gasped back to life. The church exploded with praise, calling him God's general. But Sister Sarah, standing in the crowd, wept silently. She had seen it, the same black mist that rose from the woman's body, drifting toward Pastor Paul's hands like smoke. Later that evening, as she sat under the dim streetlight, she whispered, Lord, if this man serves darkness, expose him. Use me even if it costs my life. The week that followed was one of strange happenings in Lagos. People began to whisper that Pastor Paul's miracles had turned darker. Some said they saw a shadow following him after service. Others claimed to hear screams around his house at midnight. Inside his mansion, Pastor Paul sat before the clay pot at the shrine. The black water bubbled as if it were alive. He trembled. "O Great Spirit," he whispered, "I have done all you asked. The crowds have grown and the world now knows my name. What more do you want from me?" The dark voice rose from the water, deep and mocking. "You promised loyalty. You swore your blood and the blood of others would feed us. But your heart grows weak. You think of the God you betrayed." Pastor Paul's voice broke. "I am only a man. I cannot keep doing this." The voice laughed, cold and cruel. "Then your end is near." At that moment the candles in the shrine blew out. The darkness swallowed him whole. Pastor Paul stumbled back, clutching his chest. He could feel something crawling inside his veins, a curse spreading like poison. That night Sister Sarah dreamt again. She saw a river filled with fire and Pastor Paul standing in it, his white suit burning, his eyes pleading for help. She woke up drenched in sweat. "God," she cried, "what are you showing me?" A voice whispered in her heart, "Expose the darkness, but do it with wisdom." The next Sunday, Sarah decided to visit Pastor Paul's mansion. She told the guards she had a special message from God. Reluctantly, they let her in. When Pastor Paul saw her, he forced a smile. "Sister Sarah, the prayer warrior, what brings you here?" She looked straight into his eyes. "Pastor, the Lord sent me. You are walking a dangerous path. Turn back before it is too late." His smile faded. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know enough," she replied. "I have seen the shadows that follow you. I have seen the blood on your altar." Pastor Paul's eyes widened. "Who told you that?" "The Spirit of God," she said calmly. "He is calling you to repentance." Anger burned in his heart. "You dare come into my house to accuse me. Do you know who I am?" "You are a man loved by God but trapped by demons," she said softly. "He can still set you free." For a moment Pastor Paul's hands shook. Tears welled up in his eyes. "You don't understand," he whispered. "If I stop, they will kill me. They own me." "Then let God fight for you," she said. But before she could continue, a sudden wind swept through the room. The shrine door burst open and the voice roared, "Paul, she must not leave this place alive." Pastor Paul screamed, covering his ears. "No, leave her alone." The candles flared and shadows rose from the floor like smoke. Sarah lifted her hands, praying in tongues. "The light shines in darkness and the darkness cannot overcome it." A blinding flash filled the room. The shadows shrieked and disappeared. Pastor Paul fell to the ground, trembling. When he opened his eyes, Sarah stood over him, her face calm but her eyes filled with tears. "You have one last chance, Pastor. Destroy this altar before it destroys you." She left quietly. Pastor Paul remained on his knees, his heart pounding. That night he could not sleep. Every corner of his house whispered his name. He knew the covenant was breaking. The morning sky hung low over Lagos, grey and heavy with rain. Inside Fire of the Spirit ministry, the air felt different. The choir sang, but their voices shook as if something unseen lingered among them. Pastor Paul had not been himself all week. His once bright eyes were now shadowed with fear. He stood at the pulpit, sweating, his Bible trembling in his hands. "The Lord is good," he began, but his voice cracked. A low whisper echoed in his mind, "You belong to us." He froze, clutching his chest. Members stared in confusion. From the back row, Sister Sarah rose to her feet. Dressed in a simple white gown, her eyes glowed with quiet courage. She knew this was the moment heaven had prepared. "Pastor Paul," she shouted, her voice carried like thunder through the church, "you cannot serve two masters. Today the truth must be revealed." The congregation gasped. Elder Tun tried to calm the crowd, but it was too late. The air shifted, the lights flickered. Suddenly a wind blew through the sanctuary, knocking over chairs. Pastor Paul screamed, dropping his microphone. "Leave me alone," he shouted at no one. The people began to panic. Some ran to the doors, others fell on their knees praying. The shadows appeared again, dark, swirling, hungry, the same ones that had followed him since he made the blood covenant. They circled the altar, whispering his name. Sister Sarah walked forward unfazed. She raised her hand and began to pray aloud. "Father, expose the works of darkness. Let your light break every chain." The ground trembled. Pastor Paul fell to his knees, crying, "Forgive me, Lord, I was blinded by fame and power. Free me." The black mist screamed, twisting violently, "He belongs to us." "No," Sarah declared. "The blood of Jesus speaks a better word than blood sacrifice." A great light filled the church, bright, fierce, and holy. The shadows shrieked and vanished one by one, leaving behind only the echo of their rage. When the light faded, Pastor Paul lay face down, weeping uncontrollably. The congregation watched in stunned silence. Sister Sarah knelt beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "Your secret is no longer hidden. Now you must choose redemption or ruin." Pastor Paul sobbed, "I will destroy the altar, I will confess everything." True to his word, that night he returned to the river shrine, this time carrying only a Bible and a lantern. The same place where he had once made his covenant now stood silent, waiting. He poured oil over the clay pot and struck a match. Flames leapt high, devouring the shrine. The wind howled like a dying spirit, then went still. For the first time in years, Pastor Paul felt peace. Days later he stood before his church, no longer dressed in white suits but in plain clothes. "My brothers and sisters," he said softly, "I have sinned. I sought power without God, I deceived you all, but the mercy of the Lord has found me." Many wept, some forgave him, others left in anger, but Sister Sarah only smiled gently. She knew her mission was complete. Years passed. Pastor Paul became a humble preacher, warning others about the dangers of dark power. His church grew smaller but purer, and whenever people asked how he survived, he always said, "Because one woman listened when God spoke." Moral lesson: true power does not come from charms, shrines, or spirits of the night. It comes from truth, humility, and the fear of God. Evil may shine for a season, but light always exposes the darkness.